if you're looking to acquire Deshaun Watson, and there's a number of teams that were looking, including your favorite local team, you've already made the decision that you're okay with the and you're going to take a hit. You're going to take a public relations hit, and it's going to be pretty stinking significant in today's world.
Early, we're ready, we're rocking, we're Birds 365, and we're here for the next 2 hours. Appreciate you jumping in. Let's see, nobody's hopped in yet. Oh, we believe that they'll hop in any moment now because the Mac and Mac guys are underway on a kind of a wait for it Wednesday because JW, we're counting down the weeks. We are down to 3 now. It's 3 weeks from today that the NFL season officially gets underway. When we say the NFL season, it's the NFL year. What it really signifies is my favorite oxymoron in all of sports, legalized tampering, which the NFL actually puts out there as a way to describe the couple of days before players could officially sign free agent contracts. But go ahead and negotiate. Absolutely go ahead and come to a meeting of the minds. But you can't really do anything because that would be against the rules. What the hell are the rules there for then? I'll get more into this as we get closer to the first day of the league year. I'll bet you a little bit more because I think it's one of the stupid. The NFL doesn't do stupid stuff. This is just stone cold stupid. But yes, we will be getting there before you know it. And the conversation will continue about the Eagles and the quarterback position. And yes, there are 3 names that are being kicked around as guys who may become available or quarterbacks for other teams right now, but the Eagles may be able to get involved with a potential trade for them. And there's a little new news on each of them. Let's start with Deshaun Watson down there in Houston. His agent slash lawyer, I guess it's more his lawyer than his agent. I don't think he represents his sports interests, attempted to delay Sean Watson's need to be deposed in the ongoing civil lawsuits against him for sexual harassment down in Houston. And the judge said, thank you, no, that he is expected to testify and be deposed in the 9 cases that don't have criminal charges attached to them. However, if he should say anything in any of those cases, certainly those who are investigating the other cases criminally can use them. I can use those statements against them. So it looks to me like as long as the possibility of criminal prosecution is still there, and Harden said that he thinks by April 1st, it will have been decided and either they'll press charges or they won't. There's no way that Deshaun Watson's going to testify in these cases, Johnny Mac. And if he doesn't, he's going to put himself in peril because if someone's accusing you of sexual harassment and you get the chance to defend yourself and you go, I'll take the Fifth Amendment. Well, it's not going to go well for Deshaun Watson. So the thought process that has Deshaun Watson available by the NFL's draft, which I would think draft picks going back and forth, the Texans are going to want at least some that occur in this upcoming draft. The possibility of Deshaun Watson being moved is shrinking with this latest court proceeding.
I don't. Yeah, I mean, certainly from Houston's perspective, they were hopeful from every indication the Texans to make a decision by March 16th because his contract is, $35 million guaranteed. So they want this off the books as pretty much by the start of the new league year, as you mentioned, legal tampering and working out trades that can't become official until March 16th. But as you saw last year with the Carson Wentz trade, it was agreed to a couple weeks before that, and obviously it becomes official. So that was their hope, and their hope was this would be cleared up. I think, everybody's hope this would be cleared up from a criminal standpoint. That's the key. The civil cases, I don't want to say they're not a big deal because they're a big deal, but if you have already made your decision as a team looking to acquire Deshaun Watson, you're not worried about that. In other words, you're only worried about the criminal part of it because that could go in a really, really dark direction, and you could start talking about prison time. And at that stage, everything's off the table. Then nobody's going to give up anything for Deshaun Watson. So that's always been the key. And man, I can't tell you from how many months I've been to people in Houston and people from both sides, from Deshaun. It's understandable from Deshaun Watson's camp. They say, well, there's not going to be any criminal action. That's understandable. But everybody else seems to think that as well. So I hold it to more credence of it's very unlikely that the Houston District Attorney's Office is going to go forward with any criminal complaint. But until they do, and why it's taken so long, nobody can answer. And why Rusty Hardin all of a sudden comes up April 1st, that's the day that they're going to make a decision. Maybe there's some kind of grand jury. I don't know the intricacies of the grand jury down there. Maybe one group leaves and one group comes in on April 1st and they're going to make a decision. I don't know. He seems to be pretty confident that there's going to be a decision by April 1st, which is right smack dab in the middle of March 16th and April 28th. March 16th, the start of the new league year. April 28th, the first round of the draft. That is what we call in NFL circles leverage season. That's when you have your most leverage. And that's why the Texans want this completely sort of done and Deshaun Watson out of their life for good. And even Lovie Smith came out and said, you don't give out, I think he said, you don't give out starting jobs in the spring, but he pretty much gave Davis Mills the starting job as the starting quarterback for the Houston Texans. So, they've moved on from Deshaun Watson. It's just a matter of how do they get rid of him. And then you start talking about teams willing to go after him. Now, Stephen Ross, and who's got his own problems,
we'll get there.
Yeah, made that decree. He had green lighted the acquisition of Deshaun Watson at the trade deadline last year. He was on his way to Miami. Deshaun was happy. That's where he wanted to go. And he could only settle 18 of the 22 cases, 22 civil cases. But they got those 18 done real quick, Jody. They got those 18 done real. I remember we were talking about it at the time. How are they going to get 22? Well, they got most of them done. They got most of them done real quick. And there
was
were
that the number? As many as 18? 18. I apologize for not remembering. I know it was more than half, but it was 18 out of 22.
18 of the 22. And there were four
and
holdouts.
that could have been from the Deshaun Watson side. Because one side is certainly got access.
It was, but it's been widely. That's where I got it. So you're right. It is from one side, and it's been widely reported since, and other people have confirmed it as well. So I'm very confident in that number, that 18 of 22, and there were four holdouts. So it was a lot closer than people think it was. And ultimately they couldn't get all 22 done. So,
right. But let's report this correctly too. How many suits have actually been settled?
Zero.
None. So we can say that they reported that they had an agreement for 18 out of 22, but until it comes off the docket, it's not done. Right now, he's got 0 of the 22 suits settled. He may be able to settle 18, 19, 20, and the Dolphins asked for all 22 to be settled before they would okay the deal. Until you actually come to an agreement, sign off on it, do all the paperwork, write the check, nothing has been settled.
That's true, but it's very hard to imagine 18 people who agreed to a settlement, essentially agreed to a number. Let's be honest, and who knows? They might have signed paperwork agreeing to these settlements once the other four are cleared up. Obviously, from their standpoint, they want it all cleared up at once. So I wouldn't be concerned about that. In other words. And I'm just throwing a number out there. And, if you agree to settle for $100,000 and all of a sudden, okay, the date gets moved back because there are 4 holdouts, and then you say, well, I want $1 million. It's probably not going to happen. I mean, I guess it could, but it's probably not going to happen. So the larger point is, if you're looking to acquire Deshaun Watson, and there's a number of teams that were looking, including your favorite local team, you've already made the decision that you're okay with the public, and you're going to take a hit. You're going to take a public relations hit, and it's going to be pretty stinking significant in today's world. You've already done that decision making, and you already said, all right, I'm okay with that part of it, and you're also going to get a suspension. Might be 6 games. People have speculated, might be 10 games, might be 12 games. You're okay with that as well. You've already made those decisions because of the, as Andrew Brand always says, friend of the show, the greater the talent, the greater the tolerance, the talent versus tolerance equation. That's what we're talking about with Deshaun Watson, because if this is the 53rd guy on the roster, nobody cares. He's out. He's done. He's blackballed. I even go back, people, Jeff Gladney was a first round pick in 2020? He got in a domestic dispute with his girlfriend. Some ugly pictures surfaced. He hasn't been seen since. And that's a talented kid who was a first round pick, immediately cut. Nobody else has even gone near him. In a different generation, I'm not making moral judgments. In a different generations, he would have got chance number 2, chance number 3, chance number 4, just because of how talented he was or he is. And nobody will even look at him because it's a different world. But quarterbacks, it's a quarterback league. How many times we talk about it?
They play by different rules. You are correct there. So I brought all this up because the chance of trade for Deshaun Watson right now, at best, is on hold. That's the best you can state it as right now.
Real quick, Jody, before you go into that, and you're right, but before you go into that, he still doesn't want to come here. He still didn't waive his no trade clause. So, I mean, even if he wanted, even if it was cleared up for whatever reason, this guy doesn't want to play in Philadelphia. Now, as I pointed out, that's always fluid as well, because remember when the Eagles originally, and they sent an investigator down to Houston, they did the whole 9 yards to get as much information on this as they could get. And they decided, all right, let's try. And he did not agree to come to Philadelphia. Now, things have changed. Remember, back then, Nick Sirianni was a nobody. He was the last guy in the hiring cycle. Now, who's Nick Sirianni? He had the bad press conference. Now he's a playoff coach. Devontae Smith wasn't on this team. It looked like they didn't have a weapon to stand on. Now they have Devontae Smith and Dallas Goedert. So things can change. Dallas Goedert emerging as one of the best tight ends. But as of now, he is not. He said he doesn't want to play for Philadelphia.
Right. I'm at least leaving that in abeyance as well, because things change. As you say, it's a fluid situation. But his availability to the Eagles or anybody else sits on hold until they can get this legal wrangling done. And it doesn't look like it's going to get done. I foresee more stalling because they couldn't get the continuance they wanted till after April 1st, which means he's going to take the 5th, which means it's going to be a while before this gets settled. And, oh, by the way, we are working with some deadlines, as in the day of the NFL draft. And I don't know if they'll be in a position to say, yeah, give us Deshaun Watson, knowing that, first of all, he could go to jail. And second of all, he could get suspended by the NFL. Yeah, let's give up 3 first-round picks to get a guy who's got to go to jail first, then face an NFL suspension.
Oh, he's getting suspended. Everybody knows that. So they already know that. That part of it is baked into it. And if you're willing to give up what you're going to give up, then you've already made that decision. There's going to be some kind of suspension. The criminal part is, so if Rusty Harden is right, and April 1st is, look, they prefer March 16th. But if April 1st is the date and the criminal potential charges go away, and that's off the table, there's still time. There's still time to get things done by April 28th.
Time is starting to get squeezed, is my only point. All right, let me get to one of the two other quarterbacks before we get our first break in. Russell Wilson. I noted that Evan Macy, your fellow collaborator at phillyvoice.com, had a column today about one particular wagering outlet that is actually letting people bet on where a player may be traded to. And there are odds being posted right now on Russell Wilson. And a week ago, the possible Russell Wilson being traded to the Philadelphia Eagles, they listed about 12 teams. And I think the Eagles were 11th out of the 12 teams that were listed as potential landing spots for Russell Wilson. And they had the Eagles at 40-1. As of this week, the Eagles are tied for the first choice of where Russell Wilson would land. And the odds have come down to 5-1. A week ago, you could have gotten 40. If you want to make the bet this week, it's come down to 5. Yeah. And what has changed? Answer,
what has changed?
Nothing. Nothing's changed. He's still a Seahawk. He still can't be dealt. The Eagles are still debating Jalen Hurts. Nothing other than people's opinions has changed. Now, that's a pretty drastic drop. I follow this stuff. I have a
well, that's what I'm saying. You're a betting guy, so you know better than anybody. That kind of tells you what these odds mean. I mean, yeah, that was from sports betting. So anybody wants that, sportsbetting.ag. Because I got the same email. Obviously, they send all these things out. And they made a big deal out of it. The Eagles were 40-1, as you mentioned, or plus 4,000 last week. Now they're 5-1. Some guy wherever sports betting is making a decision. I don't know, maybe read something online. Again, with Russell Wilson, first of all, he hasn't agreed. The Seahawks haven't agreed to trade him, number one. So that's hurdle number one. Number two, even if you say, all right, we're going to redo this thing in Seattle, we're going to go in a different direction. We're going to rebuild this thing, and we're going to trade Russell Wilson. Then you got to get him to agree to come to Philadelphia because, again, last year, that was not on his list. His agent put out a list of 5 teams that he would consider going to if Seattle traded him. The Eagles were not on that list. Again, things change, fluid, but until we know he's willing to come here, then maybe he could make the call and say, hey, maybe you should think about moving on from Russell Wilson. But yeah, those numbers, and it's hilarious because I think I got the sports betting email about 3 minutes before bookies.com sent out their their quarterback sort of email with the odds of where Aaron Rodgers is going to play next year. You would know better than me how they come up with these odds, but it's not scientific. I will say that.
It's part scientific, but it's part feel too. It's kind of like sports in general. Do you use analytics or do you use your experience in deciding what's going to come in the future? This I do understand a little something about. These type of wagers where someone could actually dictate the outcome of it. They're not going to take massive wagers. There is a cap on how much you can bet on something like this. And the biggest day of all in this vein was Super Bowl Sunday, where they have the length of the national anthem, the color of the shoes that Snoop Dogg is going to wear. Well, Snoop Dogg can decide the outcome of that wager. So they're not going to let someone within Snoop's inner circle put down $100,000 at 4-1 to cash in because they know what Snoop's going to do. So that is certainly the same case here that Russell Wilson, as you correctly stated, both Deshaun Watson and Russell Wilson have no trade clauses. So they have a big ability to influence the outcome of this potential wager. So because of that, any wager that is like that, they put a cap on what you can bet. You can't bet all that much. So if someone does make a significant bet, Oh, that can swing the odds drastically because you can't make that big of. If you make the max bet that you can make, whatever their cap is, yeah, you can drive something from 40-1 down to 5-1. So it's very feasible that that's the case because I don't think we're looking at a large pool of money. There's somebody throws $5 on something like that because you can only bet $40 anyway. It's all right. Let me put 5 on it. So it is legit that something like that can happen. Is there someone that oversees that and is always on top of the odds and can change them at any point if certain information gets out? Yeah, there can. I just don't see the information out there. Who reported that, Russell Wilson has rethought his position and he is now considering the Philadelphia Eagles? Have you seen that anywhere?
No.
Neither have I.
In fact, I saw we're going to have Mike Gill, hopefully, and I'm going to do a little business on air. Did you send a link to Mike, Xander? But I'm trying to get that done. But, Mike had John Clayton on his local show in South Jersey, and he said the Russell Wilson stuff. I don't know. We'll talk about it with Mike, but he said it was the stupidest story he's seen in 50 years as far as however long. John hasn't been doing it for 50 years, but he's been doing it for a long time. And he said it's a silly story. So we'll get that from Mike, but after the break. But I haven't seen anything, and certainly no indications that even if Seattle would want to trade him, that he would want to come here as well, because it would be Chicago, New York, Las Vegas. I forget the other two. I can look it up. I know those were three of the pod teams.
Right. There were a whole bunch of stories at the end of the year. Russell Wilson's being dealt. And, by the way, Pete Carroll's going to be replaced as the coach. You're going to step aside. Is Pete Carroll still the coach of the Seahawks? Yeah, he is. I note that because I refuted those rumors throughout. I said Pete Carroll's staying as the coach of the. Even if they decide to trade Russell Wilson, I think Pete Carroll's staying as the coach of the Seahawks. And if you ask me if they're going to yay or nay trade Russell Wilson, I still say nay. I think it's going to be Carroll and Wilson back in Seattle again next year, to the dismay of some Eagle fans who want to see Russell Wilson land here. I didn't know that Mike Gill is talking to John Clayton. If he's getting John Clayton information, that's as good as you're going to get about the Seattle Seahawks. We'll talk about that and a whole bunch of other Eagle stuff with our buddy Mike Gill next here on Birds 365.